What's up, Koku?
What's up, Drew? How you doing?
I'm great. It's Unhinged episode 10. It's the
It is
10th
the
episode.
10th one, man. We on a roll.
Yeah, it's actually I feel like I have a big like championship to celebrate right now. So like
Oh, what?
beyond even the 10th episode, I'm just hyped.
Okay, so what's going on with you? What happens?
I'm currently and officially the MVP of Broward Park right now.
Oh, wow.
You know what I'm
What
saying?
happened?
I dropped a I dropped a 16-point victory
Okay.
on somebody who's 19 years old, so half my age. You know what I'm saying? And he came out firing. You know, he came out
Yeah.
like he hit, you know, that shot to like get ball, like
Mm,
where you decide. He
mm,
came out and he hit that from like 25. And I was
mm,
like, okay, all right. You know, he kind of like sized me up and he was like, oh, let me
mm.
see if I can
Like
easy target over there.
yeah.
Um, and uh and I beat him fair and square.
Mm-hmm.
And the last shot I would say was an epic game winner. It was like Kawhi over Philly. Like it bounced like 3 times on the rim. Like
Mm-hmm.
now this is like my peak moment. I feel like I need to
And
retire.
any footage?
No footage this time. It's gonna just be the stuff of legend, like you know what I mean, like Earl Manigault. Like only if you were there, if you know, you know. You know what I'm saying? It was great though.
Exactly.
It
No,
was
that's
amazing.
great. I mean, not much going on this side. It's just like been super hot, so I've just
Yes.
been, yeah, just trying to keep cool.
What does the heat do to your hair situation? I just want to understand like how is that like a heat management? How does that go?
My real hair or wigs or what?
Listen, I mean, whichever, however you want to play it. You know what I'm saying? Like whatever makes sense to you.
Well, it's ill-advised to be like, okay, I'm just wigging it because we're here. You know what I'm saying? Like my hair
Yeah,
is just,
yeah,
it's all over the place. But
yeah,
like my real hair, it doesn't really matter. It's just, regular hair. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
just, I can wear it out and that's fine.
I feel like the wig might also, depending on the wig, be
Yeah.
like a cooling factor. You know what I mean? Because it's just like you keep it, and that the wig, if you do a shorter one, maybe it's like a little bit less of the heat. But I don't
Yeah.
know. Like
So
I
no,
don't know.
the short wig is better in the heat, but no wig is good in the heat. Essentially, it's like you're walking around with a fitted all day. So it's like, think about wearing a fitted in a hot subway with no AC and you're on a hot
Yeah,
car. And
yeah,
you
yeah,
see you
yeah.
see a chick with a wig down to her butt, she is baking.
She's suffering.
Don't believe nothing that you see here.
Yeah.
That is an absolute fact. And she's gonna play it off, but she's hot.
All right. Before we jump in, I really want to understand the answer to this question. I think you
Mhm,
would know it because you're like nearly a lifelong New Yorker.
mhm.
Why do people stay in the hot car? Like what possesses them to just hang out in there?
I believe if you go in that hot car, if you were to have a conversation with every single individual in that hot car, they probably don't speak English or they are
Mm,
some kind of foreign national and they're just like, it's just a slice of home. That
mm,
120-degree heat out in the sun,
right.
back in Africa, back in
Yeah.
the Caribbean, back in South
Bangalore.
America. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So those are
Yeah. Yeah.
people that are just soaking it in. They have a different kind of like what the heat does to them is not the same thing it does to the rest of us that have adapted
Right.
to air
They're
conditioning.
survivors.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. No, I respect that.
Hmm.
Um, so we have a slate of really hot topics, speaking
Hmm.
of, and I want to get into this one straight away because
Okay.
I honestly don't understand it. It's because
Hmm.
Irv Gotti was on Drink
Hmm.
Champs, right? And
Yeah.
he told the story, the behind the music
Hmm.
of Murder Inc. And specifically the thing that I think raised eyebrows was the relationship between him and Ashanti.
Which was so unnecessary and just so messy. And it's
Yeah,
like, my thing is, nobody cares who anybody slept with 20 years ago.
right, right.
It just doesn't matter. It's one of those things like where somebody says, they slept with so and so in high school. I had them back in the day. I used to have a friend on the block, and he used to always say, like, yo, like there was a crackhead, right?
Mm.
And he was like, yo, I took Shorty down back in the 80s and she was bad. And I'm like, what is this? Yeah, like this is very weird.
Like, is that your trophy right now?
It
Like,
just he was like, no, but y'all ain't see her back then. I'm like, yo, I don't even know what to do with
but
that.
that's a
You know what I'm
lot like
saying?
Irv Gotti because it's like this is not to your credit, right? Like when you
Right.
bring up old shit like that,
Yeah.
it's like I feel like everyone looks bad. And I feel like he retold what could have been a really interesting story in a
Yeah.
way that makes everyone look bad.
Yeah, I think obviously there's obviously a lot of bitterness there. A lot of
Hmm.
people are pointing to this as, maybe he's still in love with her, he's still feeling type. This is not about love.
Yeah,
See,
yeah,
this
that's
is
true.
about Ashanti like releasing herself from the shackles, at least that's
Yeah,
how she would look at
yeah,
it, of the situation and finding love that made sense for her. Now, we're not going to act
right,
like either of them were good actors at the time because
right,
Irv was dealing with his wife, or Irv had a wife, not dealing.
right, right, right,
And
right,
Ashanti was at that time, his young protege.
right.
And a lot of these things can be true. He was responsible for her sound. She had been signed before. He
True.
was able to help her not with her pen because Ashanti does write. Let's be fair, but as
Right.
far as like just encouraging her to make really great music. But there's an abusive dynamic there too. I'm gonna have to
Yeah.
say
I
that.
mean, I was
I
gonna ask,
know.
is that a Me
Yeah.
Too
Yeah,
situation?
like
Like,
she was grown, so grown people are gonna do what they do. But a lot of these things when they happen that way, they're also like in hindsight, you could have done better, and things could have just been different. And you can look at those things in hindsight and not have to make them messy because
yes.
Ashanti's like in her 40s now.
Right, right, right,
Yeah. So, and she probably looking like, damn, like I was messing with this guy 10 years my senior, looking at it like, okay, never gonna do that again. It's a learning experience.
right,
But
right.
he's holding on to it like this thing, like, I own her, or yeah, I was in love with her, and she had the nerve to go off with Nelly. Well, that was a relationship. That was her and Nelly were together. They
Yeah,
were not creeping on anybody. That was a relationship.
right.
And for both, I think for Ashanti and for her part with Irv Gotti at that particular time, that what was probably very real to her too, until she
Mhm.
realized that like this is probably not the best thing for me, and that's why she needed to release herself from that situation. I just don't understand why he's so embittered by her decision to be free when anybody that looks through this in a mature lens would understand completely where she's coming from and why she's not even copping to any of this, because why talk about it?
Yeah, right. I don't think you give that juice, right? Like it,
Mhm,
because like clearly he wants that to
mhm.
give him some juice, which is so odd to me because I feel like he's transitioned into a legitimate producer career in the television space, right?
Sure.
Like he
Yeah.
did Tales,
Mhm.
he's got his own right now, and I think for him to dredge that up, it makes me feel sorry for his wife actually. Like
Yes,
it's
she's
like
just
he
getting
he
beat
he feels
down.
nothing for his wife to be doing this.
It's like he just keeps reopening the wound year after
Right.
year and just bringing it up like it's nothing. And just by
Right,
all accounts, anybody will say his wife is like the sweetest woman. Just like,
right.
is this even fair to have to
And you can
go through
tell,
this?
she's merciful because she's
Hmm.
the one who has to deal with what's behind those veneers on a day to day. You know what I mean? Like she's
Are they
dealing with
still married? I don't even know that, so I'm not even sure if she's still dealing
that's
with it. But
actually
you
a
know what?
good question. And that's a
But
great
they're
question.
they're and I always say this too, but they're a family, they have children. So it's not
Yes.
even just his wife we're talking about here. These are the things that you're saying, and you have children. What are your children thinking about this? Because
Right.
not for nothing, even when your children look at Ashanti, like Ashanti looks damn good.
Yeah.
Looks just as
She
good
looks
as she
great.
did. Looks beautiful, great, still in
Yeah.
shape, still just as pretty as she was back in the day.
Yeah.
So it's like she's still someone that your children would even salivate over. So
Yeah.
how does dad look talking greasy like this? And it's like, that's my
Right.
mom you're embarrassing. And
Yeah, for
I just
real.
don't like that. Mhm.
Ashanti, she's Essence Fest ready. You know what I mean? Like she's like
Mhm.
that peak. Like I have a theory. Me and one of my homies, Cab, have this theory about 40-year-old black women. How like
Mhm.
40-year-old black women are actually the best like human specimen on the planet.
Why is this?
Like I feel like okay, if you look at a 40, because like look, 40-year-old Asian women aren't doing bad for themselves,
No, they're
right?
not. They look great. Mhm.
They look great. But I think 40-year-old black women, that's like just real peak time. Like if you look at any of the actresses we know as like beautiful classic beauties anyway,
Mhm.
look up the picture when they turn 40. And it's like it is unmatched.
Like
I'm
a
talking like
real,
Nia
yeah.
Long,
Mhm.
Regina King,
Mhm.
Regina Hall, like when it hit 40, it's like just the perfect age of like all the melanin is intact, like the posture, the fucking readiness, the confidence. And I feel like
The
Ashanti,
readiness.
yeah, I mean, for life, um, for life's challenges. And Ashanti, she's an excellent example of like someone who's aged so well and so gracefully too. Like when you're in entertainment and I think there's this tendency, and we talked about this with like some of the younger stars, right?
Yeah.
Where, their partying kind of catches up to them, right? Like male or female, the partying will catch up to you. And I don't think that's what happened to her. I think she was at the spa, she was in the gym, she was eating right, and it shows.
Yeah, the only thing we ever see with Ashanti is she is on a beach.
Yes.
She's
Yes.
kicking it. She's having a good time.
Yes.
She's looking relaxed. She's low
Yep.
stress.
Yep.
And I think in the interview with Angie Martinez, if I recall correctly, I think she's pescatarian and for quite a long time. And I think she was even saying that she was vegan at some points.
Wow.
So she's somebody that really does, it's a lifestyle thing. It's not, kind of a phase. People jump into like, I'm vegan for a few. I've done that too, where I was like vegan for like 5 months or something like that.
Right.
Whatever.
How did you manage that? Like the Chick-fil-A and like, how did you, what was going on?
Well, McDonald's fries are vegan. Just so
they absolutely are. Well, speaking of fast food, Popeyes is in the headlines, and not for the reason you think.
Not for the reasons you think. Okay.
First of all, shout out to the New York Times digital chief for coming up with a headline that included Popeyes for this story, because that's like brilliant stuff.
You noted that.
You've heard about POPEYE'S-GATE, right?
I heard about POPEYE'S-GATE, and I am floored. Very few things are just such that I'm just like, I have a visceral visual reaction, pop eyes pop out.
Yeah.
That was one where I was just like, what is going on here? This is wild.
So I don't know the names, but I know the situation well, because it's been now sort of tread through the news cycle and social media.
Names aren't important, yeah.
So I'm gonna sort out the details as I can, which is that a 34-year-old Black woman and a 44-year-old Black man got married. So this article is a wedding announcement. New York Times does wedding announcements. It's basically like an article that explains how the couple met and what led them on their path to marriage and matrimony, whatever.
Okay. So
this particular couple, the man and woman met on Hinge. So they connected on a dating app where you have to connect with both people in order to speak.
So I'm not familiar with Hinge.
Okay.
And I don't know what you know about it. Okay, because okay. I
can tell you.
I was just gonna. I just want to know, because I know that there are some dating apps that are completely associated with just hooking up. Then there are some dating apps where the people just genuinely want to find a love connection. So where does Hinge?
And Hinge is on that side where they want to find a love connection. It's more and you specify that, right? So Tinder's more the hookup app, or your Black people meet, for instance. Those are hookup apps, right? That's like sliding in the DMs.
I know somebody that met their white wife on Black people meet, and they're happy.
Is that right? Oh, is that a pioneer? So on Hinge, it is definitely designed for you to make strong connections. They have features like being able to record a voice note. They have different kinds of leading questions about your lifestyle, or I can't it's a deal breaker for me if you blank, and then you fill out. So there are some real great qualifiers for connection, and in this case, the woman and man connected on Hinge, which is the only way you can start talking. And apparently he canceled on her twice after they had started speaking. So there was some level of connection, but for some reason, before the first date happened, he canceled twice, that's actually probably the biggest part of the story, the biggest detail. Right. Because a third time they arranged to meet, and before they arranged to meet, she said to him just straight up, hey, if you're going to cancel on me again, just delete my number. I'm blocking you. This is not worth it to me. It's not worth my sort of trouble.
That's fair.
Which is super fair, right? But they decided, and this was pre second wave pandemic. So it was things were just opening up in first wave of pandemic. Okay. And they decided to meet in a Popeyes parking lot, right? Because that was the place that they could meet. So they were outside. They were literally outside.
They were literally out.
Right. And then he showed up with a KFC, a meal, a 2-piece
for himself.
Right? He showed up with it for her to share. So he had a prepared meal, you know what I'm saying? And she was pleased. They talked, they connected. They talked on the phone. So it was a great connection, basically.
Okay.
Like they shared a first kiss, etc.
In that parking lot.
So I think it was in the parking lot, and then maybe other things happened that weren't in the matrimony story, right?
With KFC breath.
With KFC grease on the lips. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a bad thing. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing.
I don't know. I have not explored those those waters. So I don't know.
I know, but I think it's a really Black thing to have chicken grease on your lips for your first kiss. I feel like that's like a sign that things are gonna go well.
I keep chicken grease. I need some chicken grease right now.
Keep a tub of chicken grease.
I keep it, you know.
So with the chicken grease on deck, they have this great conversation. They connect, basically, right? Like that, the false starts end up not mattering because they align on certain values. He wants to be a homeowner and believes in generational wealth. She wants to be a homeowner and believes in generational wealth. She is a VP at like a financial.
I think this was also very important to the story.
So she's a VP. She's president of her MBA association, and I think her sororities alumni association. So she's a well-to-do Black woman who earns a lot. And I believe he was like information systems, like an IT person. He was an IT person. So
IT person career. Is vague.
Right, steady career though.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's
but also coming off of a divorce. He had been married in 2011 for 6 years. He got divorced in 2017 apparently. So it's like, you know, he wasn't the freshest pick, right? He could be considered damaged goods. Like if it were the other way,
right?
You know, and she was coming off of a divorce, right? And 44, you know, things would be said about her. So he wasn't necessarily the freshest pick.
I think the other thing that was noted was that he was also open about he was juggling and dating multiple women at the same time.
Yes,
right?
He was also dating 6 women, right? So he was dating 6 women, and he said they quickly became obsolete, right? And look, as a person who's been there, right?
It can
sometimes and here's the other thing about this story, and we'll get into this the gender wars of it all, but I think that like women do that all the time, right? Like have a few on decky, you know, like have a few on the roster, a few on the bench, a few waiting to get into the rotation and tryouts. Yeah, he had something like that going on when they met. They were single. They were on a dating app. Right.
Right. I mean, I guess there's you're absolutely correct. I do believe everybody has somewhat of a roster, even if there's a 6-man out there. Like you said, some people just wait and they get called up. Somebody get on injured. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So 10-day contracts. You never know.
You never know. Like exactly.
Who's gonna crack the rotation? Somebody goes out with an injury.
You come out, get that 10-day contract. You know, you fumble, like you ruin your stats. It's crazy. You got O's across the board. I don't want to name no names, but it's a couple of names I can name. But you know, you just don't do the work. So you know what I'm saying? You just have to go. And then, you know, you got to pick up and just, keep looking for new prospects. But for certainly, you know, I think that when we talk about dating, dating is not something where you owe people exclusivity. And dating doesn't necessarily even mean intimacy. It just means you are just trying to figure out.
Getting to know.
You're just getting to know. Exactly. So there's just various levels of dating. Some people do date and there's intimacy involved. And they might be having intimacy with multiple people. I'm not here to judge. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong way with this. Some people are dating. They're just literally just kind of just trying to figure out like, where do we connect on an intellectual level? It just all, it all.
I'm glad you're not here to judge.
No, the
way this story turns out, it's like, wow, I didn't think there would be so many judges. There's a Supreme Court of judges.
No, so I have my thoughts on what I would do versus, what the outcome is for sure. Certainly. But yeah, so I'm not that part of him having the 6 rotation roster. That was not the part that was alarming to me.
Okay.
But continue.
So the next phase of their dating is after 6 months, he moves in with her, right?
He moves into her home.
He moves into her home.
Father divorcee.
Yeah, father divorcee. And
do we know if these children are of that marriage, or were those children prior to the marriage? Do we know that? Detail?
I feel like now we're getting into the
okay.
That's granular. That's granular, right? Like, but even okay. So he's got he's got a past. He's got a rap sheet a little bit in the dating scene, and it's not pretty. He eventually goes to one of his homies, like an ace of his, and I guess that homie buys the engagement ring. This is after the woman has said on one of their dates, we're gonna get married. Like, I can tell we're gonna get married. Like, they're in. They already know they're in love. Like, obviously she has him moving in, right? So we're gonna get married. He's like, all right, I'm gonna take the initiative. I'm gonna ask my homie, because of whatever his financial dealings are, I'm gonna ask my homie to like, all right, go front me this engagement ring.
I think they said that it wasn't a homie, it was a coworker.
It was a coworker. Okay. Okay. Well, it has to be someone friendly, right? Like, to be able to say, all right, buy this engagement ring for me. Like, I'm gonna get you on the next check.
I've had a coworker like borrow $20, you know. But
I know, like, I forgot my card going to
or
lunch.
Like, can you spot me for lunch, and then maybe tomorrow I'll get you, like, you know, real light stuff like that, where it's like they don't really owe you anything. It's kind of, you know, back and forth stuff.
Well, the one thing about it being a coworker is that you know that person will get paid, right? Like, you understand,
you know,
like,
when they get paid.
If he's at the office, you are gonna get your money on payday. So coworker fronts him the money, eventually gets paid back for the engagement ring. They get married, and you know, then they do this whole sort of like wedding announcement. It's in the New York Times, and that's where things go off the rails, I feel.
Yeah, it just went so many different places. Some people work in complete support, like, hey, they like it, I love it. I'm a real they like it, I love it person. So I will say that. As far as what I would do, it would, I mean, the first cancellation is already like, I guess if they had a connection, like the first cancellation is already like, that's unfortunate, things happen. Second cancellation is like, that's really, you know, like, that's unfortunate. Again, great connection, we were talking. But because of that second cancellation, there would have been no third for me. So I would not be married. I would not be married. Like, there's nothing to discuss. Beyond that, I'm not meeting anybody in a Popeye's parking lot. I don't even care if it's like, you know, you owe me money and you hand
not even
me like,
the penny, not even in the first penny. Like,
I don't care about not in the we're not meeting no Popeye's parking lot. Like,
no outside date, not even take a walk date.
I mean, there are parks, right? Isn't that what people do? You go to like Central Park and stuff like that.
I want to believe that she was pleased with how things turned out, because she retold this story to like a national news outlet. So I'm like, she had to be somewhat like, oh, that's cute. Like, was there something in the banter that would have made Popeyes the place for them? You know what I mean? I
feel like he's a smooth talker.
Listen, he's doing more than
talking.
He's doing more than talking,
and that's probably it too. Because I don't know what that man got on people, where he was just got freshly out of a divorce. Well, not fresh. I don't want to be unfair, but it's, you know, pretty recently, jumps right back into another marriage. He's had kids. We don't know if that's from another woman or the current woman. 6 women was talking to him at the same time. You know, I believe this man probably, you know, he's got away with words and other things. Yeah,
I mean, look, there's a lid for every pot, though. I'm squarely in the lid for every pot camp, like I told you. And I think because it seems like the story was told from her point of view to a reporter, she must be happy, right? Like, to your point of they like it, I love it. And so the thing that kind of rankled me or like unsettled me about the conversation about it is it seemed like specifically a lot of Black women were like, couldn't be me.
Right.
And I'm just not sure how well that holds up in actual relationship dealings. And I don't just mean romantic relationships, although that's central, but it's like, if in your relationships, you don't have the space for people to make any like deviation from what you envision or expect.
Right, exactly.
What kind of relationships are you going to end up having?
No, that's a great point, because you got people that kind of like, they have their idea of who you are and who you are supposed to be for them. That's a controlling nature, though. That's kind of, that's something in a personality that a lot of times does not work for people. You know, if you seek your own independence, I don't seek friends that are just like me, or I don't look at you and say you have to be this kind of way. I'm not that kind of person. There are people that structure their relationships in that way, though. So yes, that's kind of the couldn't be me of it all. When I said it couldn't be me, it's just I'm a pretty reliable person. So there are just certain things that like that wouldn't make sense in terms of the long term. Like, is this person flaky? So flaky in a partner is not something like that. Couldn't be me. And that to me was just the initial red flag. Where I had a problem with where the relationship went, because I feel like the couldn't be me wasn't necessarily about the parking lot. A lot of people were talking around it and not trying to be real loud about it. but they felt because she was more senior in her development and her career
Mm,
trajectory, that couldn't
mm,
be me, was more so like it was unequally yoked, and she shouldn't be dating that
sure,
man
sure,
because,
sure.
and it seems to me that, and that this is where again I said, hey, they like it, I love it. She seemed more settled and more balanced and had more like going on, like in terms of financially. So I
Right,
don't want people that feel like they've got it all together to feel shamed if they can
right,
be
right,
the supporting party. Like she had a house already, it seems, right? Like
right,
when he moved
right,
in, she already had her house, she already had everything financially in order. He was able to move in and it wasn't taking anything away from her. So it's like, at what point are you just like counting people out just because they don't have what you
right,
have? Like, is that enough
right.
if somebody makes you happy? Like, I mean, like it's like saying, like, let's just say like the position that she had, right? And
Mm.
she met somebody and like they just, maybe she was just randomly at a happy hour, and she finds out that the guy is an assistant manager at Foot Locker, but they had a great connection. Does that mean that she can't date him? Like, what if he's happy with that job?
Right. And beyond just the job point, because that's actually a really good point, which is to
Mm,
say not everyone's going to be at the phase in their career that you are, but if you are occupying a role within that relationship that's agreed upon, then
yeah,
you're good, right?
yeah.
Like,
Mm,
and I say this from experience. I've been in a relationship where someone has earned more than I have. I've been in a
mhm,
relationship where someone has earned less than I have,
mhm,
and that wasn't the sticking point in those relationships. It was
mhm,
like, if we agreed to a certain role with our earnings, right?
mhm,
So it's like, if I'm the person who's saying I'll be home and I'll be domestic and I'm going to make up for whatever it is that
mhm.
needs to be made up for in order for you to keep earning and for me to be on my career track. I think that's really the conversation that needs to be had, rather than this sort of like superficial markers of what you think you should have in the world, because that's when I think people's relationships become about the external world instead of
Yeah.
like what works for them.
And it's also because people are seeing what we talk about this all the time, but like what people what they show on social media, and so
Yeah,
much of it is just not real. Even what
right,
they say, and people just, it's like you're trying to hold yourself to a standard that doesn't even exist.
right,
Yeah,
right.
like if you really were to unpack what's really happening in those relationships that you, I guess, idolize or you want to live up
Hmm.
to, it's nothing like what you're actually seeing. And I just want
Right.
people to realize that, like, nobody's perfect, and there's no perfect relationship. Do what makes you happy. I
Absolutely.
would
I mean,
hate.
it brings to mind like Megan Good. There are a lot of
Yeah.
relationships that were supposed to be these picture perfect, equally
Mm-hmm.
yoked, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
grounded in Christianity and like patriarchy and all those fun things that we say that we don't want to be a part of until it's on the table and then we want to be a part of it. And I think
Right.
that's been a surprising part to hear the outcry from Black women, because it's like, so you don't want someone to be happy with the choices that she made.
I think sometimes people just aren't happy seeing people happy.
Yeah.
Like
No,
it's kind of like, they say misery loves company.
yeah,
And a lot of times you'll see, even if you're like friends with somebody and you suddenly get into a relationship and you're just super duper happy and you have like butterflies and all
mhm,
that kind of stuff, you might have a friend that just sort of feels like someone's snatching that friend away from you. And they may
right.
do things to probably sabotage that connection and just remind you that, or find ways that you shouldn't be dating so and so. Seen that hundreds of times.
Listen, the
Mm.
headlines for this video are gonna say, Koku thinks Black women jealous, bitter. Like, social media influencer Koku calls out Black women.
I ain't got no problem with that. Okay, I'll call out anybody. Okay, stop hating on
So
your friend.
and here's my admission about the fuck boy of it all in this
Mm,
guy's situation, because there's
mm.
there's definitely some fuck boy markers that I'm quite familiar with that are going on here, which is like, okay, you're moving in with her, okay, y'all agree to that, how sustainable is that, right? Okay,
Hmm.
you're a divorcee, 10 years older, not quite where she is in her career, how sustainable is that over time, right? And so there is a valid place that critique comes from.
Hmm.
But I think the thing that makes me say uh, key for every lock, lid for every pot, is that they seem to be so much aligned on values. Like, they kept talking about through the article, like, we had the same values, we had a similar background, we had the same values.
Yeah.
And if that is the case, right, and if they're doubling down on that, and that's not just for social media for the article, that is actually the main thing you need to keep your relationship together. He's like,
Yeah.
you need some kind of alignment on values. I don't care what relationship it is, right? Like we
Yeah,
talked
that's true.
about
Whether that's
an
like, yeah.
entertainment relationship that
Mhm.
broke up, like friendship, whatever relationship
Mhm.
it is, you have to agree on the values that you're going to share to go
Mhm.
forward in that relationship.
Yeah, I think it would be really hard if you know there's a one person is religious, if you don't share
Right.
political values,
Right.
moralistic values, things of that nature. Does she want kids? You know, does she not want kids? Like all those
Right.
things. So there's so many things that, you know, you don't necessarily need to take away your own sort of so-called deal breakers. But if they're completely aligned, like you said, then I mean, who are we to judge it? You know,
Apparently we're all here to judge,
we're
right?
all here to judge.
So I saw speaking of value systems that I completely disagree with, I saw there is a writer of the New Yorker named Malcolm Gladwell who has said, actually, I'm taking his Jamaican card off this.
You're revoking it.
I'm revoking his Jamaican card because he says that we should be returning to work, that remote work does not add to our sense of purpose, and that everything is falling apart if we don't go back to work. I would say that's a Ross clot lie. That's a bum clot lie that he's telling. And I think if anything, whenever somebody says we need to go back to work mid second pandemic, I'm asking questions. You know what I mean? Like this is not the environment where you need to be like
who
ahead of the curve on going back to work.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
Let me tell you something. I'm also very offended by someone that has the luxury of being an author, right? He's got all these books out, and you are literally like sitting on the couch, Winnie the Pooh with a t-shirt and no drawers on, writing, and you're telling me I gotta go back out there and make fucking sandwiches. Like, fuck you.
Yeah,
you know?
He's doing appearances for like 20 racks, men.
Yeah,
like that's
like
the honorarium. He's getting money like for really sitting there writing bullshit too. Like a lot of his theories have been disproven. Like the tipping point, like all outliers, all that shit has been disproven, and he's still cashing checks off those books.
Yeah, I mean it's just so interesting to me. That's why I said, like, who sent you? You know, who's giving you this talking points? Because you are not even in an office. You don't have to be. Like, what are you saying right now? Or why are you saying it?
Usually it's the biracials with the white moms, man, but he's an exception to that rule that I'm very displeased with. His Jamaican mother has not done right by him.
But maybe it's because of his white passingness that makes him move in the way that he does.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you are saying things that like favor the real estate lobby or like the political establishment,
exactly,
like those things are like just a dead giveaway of like what your agenda is. And I just don't see it as, I mean, when we talk about the pandemic, in all seriousness, like frontline workers like nurses, EMTs, fast food and retail, like these people died at a disproportionate rate. Like we're talking about the vacancies and jobs and like how the workforce has been depleted. But the quiet part that's not being said is that it's because a lot of people passed away.
A lot of people died.
A lot of people died, and like rushing people who you're not even a part of that class of people.
No.
And you're rushing them to go back to work. I don't understand it.
Not to mention there are people out there that had like long COVID symptoms, and if they did not die, they also are they're not really operating at full capacity because of the COVID symptoms. They can't breathe as well.
Long COVID, there is no other COVID. Like COVID is long COVID. I say this as a person who's had it and feels like I definitely have still experienced what are called long COVID symptoms. I'm like, yeah, I think it's a degenerative, disabling disease. And unless and until we know exactly what its effects are, which I think will take the better part of this decade, why are we rushing people to interact with this disease again?
Yeah, I don't know. And then you, of course, monkeypox, which is a visual kind of thing. So I think that has got people a little more terrified. So I think with monkeypox, people are a little bit more loud about not trying to ignore the mandates to stay in the house or to wear their masks as well.
That's a shame too, that it takes for there to be like
I feel like there's vanity. I'm telling you.
Right. It takes vanity for people to like respect a disease that is very dangerous and potentially deadly. I'm I think the main thing I want to call out about Malcolm Gladwell is that he's a charlatan. Like he's like, I think the thought leader industry that he was a part of and like at the front of has influenced what happened on social media. Like I think he's on the same sort of tree and branches as like a Derek Jackson or like a Kevin Samuels or a Tariq Nasheed. Like I don't separate these people at all.
Okay.
Like I don't separate these people. Like because it like all you first it's the book. First it's like, oh, I put out a book. I'm an author, right? I'm an authority. Author means authority.
Author, yeah, it does.
Right. So that false sense of authority has now made people experts on shit that they shouldn't be talking about at all. You know what I mean? Like he literally should not be talking about epidemiology ever. Like he was like, yo, if you do something for 10,000 hours, you're an expert. Completely disproven and false. And this is the same person that's like, yo, go back to work. You're safe. You're not going to have a purpose if you don't. And I'm like, maybe we should question these people.
I just thought that particular talking point too was like, what kind of people are you becoming if you don't go back to, like, what are you talking about?
Like who?
Yeah,
who am I becoming? Alive. I'm alive as a person. How about that?
And you know what else really bothered me about that point too? He was talking about I don't remember the exact quote, but it was also speaking to like the passion of work. Many people, many of us are or have work jobs, or the majority of our jobs are really just jobs to make ends meet. To get by. There are places that have hired us, and we simply just want to remain employed so we can keep a roof over our head, feed our families, whatever the case. I do not know that many people who work a job where it is their passion. That is a luxury. Yeah, that is the luxury. So for him to say that was absolutely tone deaf, not even in this moment, but just in terms of life in general. Like, oh, how convenient of you, Mr. Author, who gets, like I said, gets to sit there like Winnie the freaking Pooh. And you're telling us we got to go outside and work at these jobs that probably have bosses that have beaten us down the whole time, It's like, come on now.
I am not impressed with his analysis of the situation. I hope that they rush him out of the paint for this one, and that people don't get sick because of stupid advice like this. So I was reading news about the place where neighborhood Nip is from. Rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle. Because there was a gruesome crash on Slauson and La Brea last week, and I'm sure you've been at that intersection. I've been at that intersection, and it's like a lot of heavily trafficked. The people died because of this crash. It was just so unexpected, and then the story unfolded in this way that became I feel like irresponsible.
Just really irresponsible and distasteful. What absolutely broke my heart about the story is that because of the intersection in the neighborhood, a lot of people that we know were really concerned about what happened and wanted to know if anybody that they knew was involved. It was just kind of, it's just like, listen, I have to drive that particular intersection every single day. I need to know, is everybody okay? So it was one of those things where it affected a lot more Black people that I know than anything else. In fact, all Black people. Yes, exactly. So what I took particular issue with this story is that they were interviewing a young woman who purported to be the friend of the woman that caused the car crash. And in this interview, she says that the woman was drunk and got into an argument with the boyfriend, and that's why she sped off. And that was kind of the story, and the news outlets ran with it.
Was that what really happened?
I don't know, right? We don't know. What bothered me about this young woman being featured in all these news stories, I mean, just there was no vetting. There's really no idea if that's exactly what happened in that particular case. And what really, really bothered me, and this is why where I say that, like, a lot of times white people really just they just see Black people and just figure they don't have any idea, like they don't know anything about Black people.
Right.
There's no Black reporter that's going to see somebody standing on a corner with a blunt in their hand, smoking and carrying on, and and then just taking their word for it, without doing some vetting. Even after they took the footage, they'd have to look back and say, is this really like, is this really true? Is this really the real version of events?
Right.
So I just feel like, you know, they just look at us and just think of us as like blunt smoking mofos that's standing on the
Yeah.
corner and like, okay, and I knew her and this is what happened. How do you know that? How do you
Right.
know that she knew her? The information might be true, you know, but it's just, is it true because that person told us, or
Right.
because they just surmised from looking at the footage that this is exactly what happened?
That pathology is what I get very concerned about, where they want this news clip version of us.
Yes.
Right. And you know the version I'm talking about. And so a lot of great
Had your
social media.
kids, had
Right.
your wife.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
you
And a
know,
lot of great sort of internet moments have come from that, even among us, right? Like where without the white gaze, even among us, there are, because look, the leprechaun clip is a classic to me. Like forever.
It's the
Forever.
leprechaun. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But also there's that, I do think what you're speaking to, and like that fourth wall, and like how it gets broken by something like a news outlet in a tragic story, is important to observe.
They're so busy trying to scoop something, and it's like, this is not a moment to scoop. People's lives were lost here, so you're so busy trying to scoop that anybody can just raise their hand and you're putting the camera and, you know, and the mic in their face. That's not okay. That's not what should have happened. That person should not have been front and center just talking. The same thing happened with that kid, remember, that died on that park ride?
Yes.
There was a little kid that died in the park ride, and they found out this woman started like a GoFundMe so that she was his aunt and she was gonna miss her nephew. Turns out the woman didn't even know the family. They find out stuff, and she's doing all kinds of press runs and everything. The family's like, we don't know her. And then they find out that she has like a pathological history of just lying for no reason and just inserts herself in all kinds of stories. Like, this is just what she does. So why aren't, again, journalism has truly died at this point. Why aren't people looking into things before they jump to conclusions or just decide? Like, I know what I saw, and I saw that a young woman went straight through an intersection and people's lives were lost. A young woman was pregnant.
Yes.
She was like 8.5 months pregnant. She was in there with her young son and her, I believe, husband or fiance, and that entire family is gone.
Wow.
And so, in fact, her sister actually took to social media to say, I just want to clarify some things that were going on too with my sister, because people have been harassing her sister, who is deceased, and were saying things like maybe her sister or maybe her sister's husband were also intoxicated. You just can't. Yeah, these are things you just can't be running with, things like that. These are families that are being affected by everything that's going on. So before you decide to rush and be first, what are you reporting? What is the impact of what are you reporting? What is the actual news here? Let's talk about what actually happened that we know happened.
I mean, one of the things that I think plays into this, and we don't even have to name the outlets to know what this phenomenon is.
I know what you're about to say, but I mean, I know where you're going with this.
It's absolutely some of the sources, and we talk about them here, right? Like some of the sources that a lot of us rely on for news are so driven by clicks, impressions, video views, plays, shares, engagement, that they don't have incentive to vet the story, right? They have a higher incentive to get those clicks, likes, views, shares than they do to make sure that the story is accurate. Because I mean, it is about the sensation. It isn't about those people's lives at all. It's just about like, well, that day we did this number in traffic, and therefore that it's worth it.
It's like it gets to a point, and if you've ever seen anything like that, where you're working in, maybe not necessarily even a newsroom, but in a capacity where you're working, where you have to deal with stories all the time, some people just really do get desensitized to whatever is being reported. Yeah, so they start talking in like statistics and analytics and things like that, and you know, and you look at the person, you're just thinking like, wow, like there's literally no humanity left because of what this job has driven you to become.
But you know what is the tricky part about that fact is, like, there's this feedback loop that happens, especially when you're doing urban and Black news. And I've talked about this. And when you're in a newsroom and you are covering like hard news, as in where people may have lost their lives, where people may be on trial for things like sexual assault, for things like armed robbery, like some of the
Mm-hmm.
more serious hard crimes, kidnapping. There is this morbid interest in that stuff too, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's what makes it tricky, which is how do you give audiences what they've already shown you they want
Yeah.
and still be true to the fact that this is a human story. Like there are people who were affected, and even if you look at something like Black Lives Matter, like let's
Yeah.
be 1,000 about it. Even if you
Yeah.
look at something like Black Lives Matter and the people who, aside from the activists, the people who profited off of those stories, like you
Yeah.
can't tell me that CNN, NBC, all those major outlets didn't profit off of how those protests looked, didn't profit off
Mm-hmm.
of the reaction to the Mike Brown tragedy and verdict. Like those were things like I remember the Mike Brown case. I was coming back from Jamaica and it was playing on the airplane direct TV. You know what I'm saying? And like this was
Mm.
like everybody on the flight is watching it. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? And it wasn't just Black people coming back from Jamaica, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
I think that is one of those like look in the mirror. We have to ask ourselves what we really want and how we consume and why.
What from what you just said, I thought about something, and like you said, people just want the clicks.
Mhm.
But think about how even with this particular accident specifically, every single news outlet, every single urban outlet,
Mhm.
whomever, blogs, all of them, Instagram pages, they played out the footage from the accident in its entirety.
Yeah,
So we saw people die. This
yeah,
was something where,
mm,
in a different time, it would have been reported on. And maybe they would have stopped at maybe the point where anything could have
right.
been like,
Impact or
yeah,
right.
impact, anything like that. But no, they played it full out, full
Yes,
out. Yeah.
that's true.
So yeah, I thought about that too. And I just said, wow, where are we all at where we're sitting through this and this is just on the news.
Yeah. I mean, the other sort of subplot or the story that seemed to emerge from um, details, eyewitness accounts, potentially connected people, is that this woman was trying to take her own life.
Right.
And she was going to do so in this way, which I don't find that believable in the least. And
I
it
don't
just adds to the sensation of whatever is going on.
Yeah, I don't know that would be necessarily the case. And I don't when I looked at the accident, I mean, I said there's so many ways that one can look at why something like this happened and
Yeah,
why aren't we just questioning why it could happen? Of course we are upset. She took those lives and she should definitely be held accountable. I mean,
yeah,
this is one of the most horrible things I've ever seen.
of course.
But what may have happened? What if it turns out that her brakes failed?
Right, right.
We don't
But
know.
that's not a sexy story, right? Like,
Right. It doesn't add to this like horrible person thing.
mm-hmm, because then
What
it's
if
about a manufacturer, then it's about
right.
happenstance.
So yeah, what if that's the
Yeah,
case? But to turn this into something suicidal, I just don't know. So that's why I very rarely try to have an instant judgment on the person without
right.
having some kind of clue or idea into what could have occurred. I don't feel comfortable just jumping out the window within like the first 30 seconds of what happened.
Yeah, or a day, right?
Yes,
Like unless I'm close to it and I'm an
yes,
investigative reporter, I
yes,
don't think I'm equipped to be able to
not at
gather
all.
all the information I might need to understand why 6 people lost their lives.
Because have they even released any toxicology reports on this woman yet?
I don't know. I haven't seen
I
it.
haven't seen any. Doesn't mean that they're not available. I just haven't seen anything of that sort. So it's just interesting to me how the news cycle kind of went here and now
Mhm.
it's a sort of plateaued in a way. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I don't know what's to come of this. I mean, she should definitely be held accountable and looks like she should definitely go to jail.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a tough story. We send obviously our regards to those families,
absolutely.
and anyone who is struggling with thoughts of suicide, taking their own lives. We want to give resources and information and support to those
Absolutely.
folks because that's a serious point to be at. We don't want anyone to be considering the worst possible thing. And I don't know. I think if it had happened on Park Avenue and 95th Street, this would be a very different story.
That may be the case as well. I think there's truth to that.
I saw bubbling up on the timeline photos from Beyonce's. Was it like it was like an album party?
I think it was like her album party, very exclusive. You know, so
yeah,
all
yeah.
all the
only.
all the A-listers, who's who.
Right.
I received no such invitation. I don't even think I know anyone.
Was it in New York?
It was in New York, but I don't even think I know anyone that knows anyone that went. Like that's how you know distantly exclusive this was.
They're a fortress over there. At Queen Bee's. They're a fortress over there. But you know, I noticed that there was a certain because it was a Studio 54, right? To kind of pay homage to
the the house, you know,
right, the vogue of it all, right? And I noticed that our Black male stars showed up in their best auntie couture.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kendrick was like my auntie who had a little something for me after the party. Like, just come see her. She'll give me like a little $20 to like, don't spend it all in one place. He looked like that. Like he had the purse. You know, he had the big jacket with the shoulder pads. Your auntie who lived with her friend. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Like, yes, with her roommate.
Yeah, she has a roommate. She's real sweet though. Real sweet. She's up on all the music. Donald Glover. He was party auntie.
He was party auntie. He was definitely the person that was, you know, selling coke in the venue.
Exactly.
He had his full on. He had his titties out.
He had his titties all the way out, and like nipples showing as well. Chest meat, taco meats.
Yeah, definitely.
Even Trevor Noah was like, you know, like your bougie grad school auntie. Like,
he definitely was. Yeah,
it was big auntie vibes from Trevor Noah as well.
Yeah,
and I'm like, you know what? I like that we're knocking down the gender norms. I'm gonna say it. Like I don't think it's always the greatest look. Like I don't think that Russell Westbrook always has the prettiest skirt in the room, right? Like
no, but it's so hard though, because when you're that tall, it's so hard like to really like dress that silhouette. And so I can understand like the challenges, but it's so funny.
Cam Newton does it.
Yeah, actually, I think Cam Newton does it very well.
Cam Newton pulls it off all the way.
Some of his fashions are super out there, but I think he does it really, really well. But Russell Westbrook, it's like just seeing him in those really long skirts, like it's just
it's like his game. He forces it a lot. He forces a lot of the action with the fashions.
As much as Westbrook gets beat down, I'm not going to contribute to that.
Wait, how are you both a KD apologist and a Russell Westbrook apologist? How does that even work?
Because I can't do I can't do pile-ons. I can't do that.
Okay, no, I feel you on that. He's a hard worker. And like I think that's kind of how his fashion reads to me, is like try hard. Like he's got a very try hard kind of fashion sense going on. Him and Dwayne Wade, those two, I'm like, I know you're trying. I know.
You know what though? Yes, but I'm gonna say that I think Dwayne Wade gets it a lot of the time though. To me, I'm gonna completely disagree on that one. I'm gonna completely disagree. No, I think Dwayne Wade. Sometimes I'm into it. I think he gets it.
He's always some version of like a fashion mullet, like business on the top, party on the bottom. Like he doesn't consistently ever come with like a thorough look all through the outfit. It's like
a fashion mullet.
Yeah, he's a fashion mullet. Yo, he will do like a really great bespoke suit, and then no shirt underneath and the Dwayne Wade glasses. You know, like or like a tank top, like a Nike 90s tank top underneath the blazer. I don't understand it. Like I think one of the things you always have to do with your personal style is be consistent with what you represent. Like I'll say about Westbrook, Westbrook is consistent. Right, like he's gonna be bare chested, right? He's gonna be bare chested a lot. You know what I mean? But that's part of his style. He's like, yo, this part of my silhouette, the collarbone, that I'm giving it. I'm giving collarbone each time. Right? Right. Dwayne Wade does it first, it's knickers, and then he's showing the calves. Then it's like, you know, the Kyle Kuzma big baggy parachute pants. Like he doesn't know. He doesn't know what he's giving on any given day.
Okay, I can understand your personal style point. That's a good one.
It's just a consistency thing. I mean, these guys. Wade isn't invited to the Beyonce party. I know that. I know I know they didn't want to take that risk of the Getty photos looking crazy out there.
Oh man, I haven't even seen the Getty photos, the rest of them. I wonder how that went.
I mean, Leo looked you know how white men do. They can look bummy. They showing up bummy no matter what.
But he does a deliberate bummy. That's sort of his personal style.
Yeah, that's true. That's also so he doesn't get noticed for being like a Me Too like weirdo creep.
I've heard these things. I have heard those things.
Yeah. So that was A-List Hollywood's sort of first chapter of the weekend. The second chapter, with the plot twist chapter, was Pete Davidson and Kim Kardashian, after an epic 9-month saga of a relationship, have called it quits.
Does love survive? How will we move forward?
Oh my God. What do you make of here are the questions I like to ask when relationships like this end. Who won? Like on the fame scale, right? Like on some everyday famous shit. Who got the best of this career-wise in the relationship?
I think that Kim's fame meter, it's where it is, right? Like there's nowhere to go. Like there's no up from here. And I don't even mean that negatively. She's she's just not at the apex of her career right now. If anything, she has to keep things interesting or do things like date a Pete.
Yes.
So I think that if we're talking about a who won, Pete Davidson, while famous on his own, you know, he does his own comedy. He's on SNL.
Sure.
He's still on SNL. I think he left, right? But he's got his own thing going on. So he was independently a name, but he wasn't a name that anybody would, you know, for one, associate.
It wasn't a household name.
He wasn't a household name. It wasn't one that they would associate with a Kardashian, but Pete Davidson has dated some Hollywood starlets. He dated
big time.
Ariana Grande.
Ariana Grande
was one. I'm kind of like
Kate Beckinsale. He also dated her.
Was another one. And Pete Davidson has this reputation of being very well endowed. Like that's kind of what the say is. Like that's a talk of the town. That's his thing.
Right.
So I think that probably with a Kim too, with the way that their media, the way that they think and the way their minds work, there probably was something that wanted them to associate themselves with that.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
You know, and the sort of the salaciousness and the dirty mindedness of the media and the people. And
it's like they don't step, if you step away from black men, it's going to be for that.
It's going to be a Pete Davidson. And I've actually even heard people specifically say even exactly that. Yeah. And they just were in a very matter of fact kind of way. Yeah. That sort of tells you where people are at. And it's funny because I've seen Pete Davidson himself say it too. Like a lot of people really aren't even sure if Pete Davidson isn't part black.
Yeah, he jokes about it all the time.
He jokes about that all the time. People think he's black.
I would say this is a huge win for Pete Davidson. I do think with Kim, you're right. It's neutral, right? Like her fame is just at the level that it is. I don't even think that. I think Kanye, because of his cultish following, he doesn't take any hits here. No. You know, he's the sort of like firebrand weirdo that he is. But for Pete, like I would say, the way I know him, because he was like one of the Comedy Central roast standouts. Like that's kind of how he started. He was a 19-year-old comedian who had the respect and adoration of a lot of older established comedians and was really, really funny. Yeah. Right. And so the times when people are like that, we're talking like Eddie Murphy was a 19-year-old comedian that everyone loved. Dave Chappelle was a 19-year-old comedian that everyone loved. And it's sometimes hard to break away from that and SNL and then, you know, go into movies. And Pete, he's like in an A24 movie now. Yeah. Right. Yeah. He's a household name, definitely among Gen Zers because of who he's dated. Right. And I think it does, speaking of like the Me Too era, I don't think it harms Pete. And I think it does him a lot to be known as like a good boyfriend, as like someone that women want to be with, as someone who women feel like listens to them and that will be invested in them. I mean, he got her initials and her kids' initials tatted on him.
Tatted, and there was a brand I think that was involved.
There was a brand. He did a brand too. So I mean, it shows about his character that he's really passionate. Yeah. Right, and that he's caring, and that even in a a really bad situation because the way that Kanye and his fans kind of attacked Pete, he kept
Yeah.
a level head like 90% of the time.
Yeah, he only got like diet petty. It wasn't, all the
Right.
time. Yeah.
Right. And he could have
Um,
gone full on, like in
yeah.
a way bigger way, knowing his roast reputation and his sense of humor.
It's funny because even as we're talking about like the tattoos and things like that, a lot of people were saying like, he got those tattoos. I know he feels stupid. And I'm like, some people don't feel like that.
Nah.
Like some people kind of like to sort of note a place and time and how they felt. And so like at the
Yes.
high, they might get that tattoo and not want it removed. It's like I felt
Yes.
really good on that day in that moment. So there are people that think like that. And I can actually relate to that too. Like I would feel that way. Like I wouldn't regret getting the tat. If that's something that I felt like I had to do, I'm not
Listen,
getting nobody's kids and I'm not
I
getting no
think,
Brandon. But I'm just
dog,
saying, if I thought I could do it or wanted to do it, I
right.
wouldn't regret it.
Look, I know so many people right now who, if they dated the so-called most beautiful, most famous woman in the world, they'd want some record of it too.
Right.
Right. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that's like necessarily a bad thing that he has the evidence that like, yo, I did that. And I think with Pete, the one thing I find about him that's really relatable and kind of intriguing is that like he is, I think, a person who can live in the present
Yes.
and even laugh off the fact that maybe Kim wasn't the best person to date.
Sure.
Like do you think that like she's like a dream to date considering all the things that go on behind the scenes with her?
I mean, I think that she might have seemed, just optically, Kim could be even now somebody's dream girl. So then once you get into the inside, you realize that maybe it's a world that's not for you. So certainly that may have been the case. And when he realized, or whenever they realized it was not a good fit, it necessarily didn't have to be something to regret, but it just wasn't what either may have expected. So I think we can say that.
I mean, her Instagram posts have a rollout, right? Like even before she proclaimed to be dating Pete publicly, like she planned how it would appear on the show too. That was a whole story and a run up to it. And I'm like, as a person who's dating that, especially if you're normal, like if you're normal and sane, I feel like that could be really trying. And it seems like he carried that well.
And you're also talking about a family, I mean, that people don't necessarily realize is that to date, they're still calling paparazzi and saying, meet us here, there. We are going to take the kids to the mall. We are going to take the kids on a very humble, shopping, whatever spree at Target. Like these are a family that every single step that they make and every time they're in the news cycle, it's because they want to be. It's not just caught them by, mistake.
Was Pete a pawn though?
Probably.
Yeah.
she because think about it, like, and I didn't think this through, but now that I'm thinking about it, because at first I was like, well, Pete's like 28, she's 41. She's, what's the situation here? But when you think about it, the people that Pete's audience and who that he resonates with, they wouldn't necessarily like they look at Kim Kardashian like, like auntie.
Yes.
Like an old lady in a sense,
Very much so.
She's aged out of what's cool to somebody that might be 28.
Yes,
probably,
that's Kylie.
Right?
That's
Kylie. That's all her right there.
Yeah.
So Kim, by dating into the Pete pool, you are bringing yourself. You're also, so you know what? You're right. It can be a little bit symbiotic because she's also kind of reintroducing her. Like, allowed me to tell y'all that I started this shit. Yeah, I'm around and I still look good.
She's holding on though. Like I think that was one of her last big plays on the board. Because I think if you are Kim, who do you go with now?
I think about that type of stuff all the time.
Like I don't know if there's like you said, there's no up from there.
No,
right? Like Pete is like, he's a buzzing name. If he dropped a comedy special right now, everyone would watch it. It would probably be quite good. People are still intrigued about where he can potentially go in his career, acting and with comedy. And I don't know if there's a name for Kim. Like when they put up the whiteboard of people that she's going to date in the next year, like I don't know if there are going to be names that ring bells more than Pete would. That are people who would actually date her, who wouldn't stand something to lose by dating her.
I think that the next move for somebody like Kim, it's going to be like some sort of like nameless, somebody that we're not familiar with, like billionaire or somebody that's like, how they say like the businessman or the investor. somebody like that, where it's like she's quietly linked up with someone that we don't know, possibly, someone like overseas, how it's done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think it'll be more like that. But what's interesting, I think we missed a really, really huge thing here.
What?
When Kanye made the post on his Instagram,
Oh,
Skeet
yeah.
Davidson is dead.
Yeah. I found that, like, I don't know, man.
I,
Kanye's
it's
frustrating and annoying.
Yeah, I thought it was weird. Like, I'm like,
Yeah.
first of all, that's just not funny.
Yeah.
Somebody brought up something that I didn't look at it that way, and they were like saying, because people will always make excuses for their faves, right?
Yeah.
And so they were saying that they believe that what Kanye meant was like their relationship was dead. Like, I'm not gonna call him Skeet anymore dead. I was like, no, it's not.
No, man.
That's not to
Like,
be up for interpretation. Like,
yeah, Kanye literally has like murder metaphors in all of his videos, like of Kim, like of Amber Rose, of Pete
right.
Davidson. Like, Kanye's like been on that murder shit.
Right. So my point is that anybody can, if you're not with the family, whatever, if some rando on the internet said Skeet Davidson is dead, like that might be funny, right? Because it's just like somebody just randomly just popping up a joke. But it's like we're not really taking into account like how Kanye might be thinking about this. Or
he's thinking about it like OJ Simpson. He's thinking about like OJ Simpson and Kato Kaelin. Like,
can you imagine if that's what I'm saying? Like, I just don't think he's healthy. So that's why these things are just not funny. Like, I just, that's
Kanye is really going out like OJ though. Like, he be with the gloves, like he be with the black gloves when he goes out all the time, and the mask, like
the whole mask,
he's going out like OJ, which is crazy because OJ started this whole thing.
It's all full circle. OJ even has a child within the Kardashian family,
Allegedly, sources say.
I
think what's great about Pete's come up here is that I'm gonna solidly say that he won. Like, and it's not to say that Kim lost, but I think what's great about Pete's come up here is like to come out of that unscathed when you had one of the worst hives after you, because like we talk about the beehive, we talk about the barbs, right, and like how that can get. But Kanye has, I think, the worst
probably the worst hive. I think his might
the most toxic hive.
Yeah, they might be worse than what the barbs do when they
And also just from a perspective of like numbers and demographics, like I think most barbs are young Black men and women, right?
Yes.
Like, I think most barbs fit into that. I think the beehive is also mostly
probably
Black.
Fairly,
right?
Yeah, but mostly Black. But
Kanye's got like the hype beast incel. He's got the MAGA. Like, he's got some weird doomsday preppers. He's got a lot of like weird type of dudes who also
Alex
are
Jones
plotting
is
things.
Probably Kanye hive. Somebody like that. Like, I'm telling you, like, it gets weird in there.
Yeah, it gets super weird. I think with Kanye too, if Pete had stayed with her or Kim had stayed with Pete longer, or whatever, I don't know who broke up with whom. That's actually a good question to ask.
That'd be great to know.
That'd be a great follow-up. But I don't know what comes of Kanye and his mental health if he has to continue to see this person with his children, continue to see this person at the Met Gala. Like, I don't know. I think that was starting to get to him in a way that made him even more like, because
unraveling.
Yeah, because Kanye still makes music, and the music is really scattered.
Yeah,
it's really inconsistent.
And he'll like re-upload certain songs, remove songs. Like, it's just kind of like this living, breathing document, but not in the good way.
Right. It's crumbling. It's giving vlogger, like live stream for 2-3 hours. That's the album. And I think if that had gone further, I could see him going out like OJ. And I think Pete Davidson kind of like saved his life, because those tweets, I remember when Kanye and him were going back and forth, and Pete finally lost it and posted.
He went dirty.
He went dirty, and he posted the screenshots, and he was kind of like, "Yo, bro, like I'm trying to help you. You know, like I'm trying to help you, but like I'll go off on you too if I need to." And I don't think it was I don't think he meant to threaten him physically.
No, but Pete even at some point posted a picture like, "I'm in the bed with your wife."
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
that was something, yeah.
But also, is that really insulting when you're not with your wife anymore and I'm clearly her boyfriend? Like, it's like,
And you are dating somebody that is a clone of your wife. It's like, this is all very weird.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I talked to one of my really, really good friends, the homie. Shout out to him. He's divorcing a white woman, so he had particular insight into that whole situation. And his theory was that Kim is a master manipulator, and that Kim having Pete around the kids, like all of those things were meant to hurt Kanye.
I can agree
and
with
that
that.
Kanye was coming out of it looking wild, but that Kim should be at least somewhat marred in this whole thing too.
I can agree with that. And I was speaking to that. Some of the things that aren't pointed out is that Kim knows his triggers. So
Yes.
even though we see Kanye lashing out and he's absolutely looks crazy, is doing really, really wild, unhinged things,
Yeah.
unhinged.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But these are things, we all know what the triggers of that person would be. So seeing him out in public with Pete, Kanye had an ask, and I keep saying this, I never thought this was a really ridiculous ask when he said, keep my child off TikTok. And everybody's like, well, she should be able to put, North on TikTok if she wants to, but North is not even of age really legally to be on the platform. So I said, well, there are certain compromises, even in a divorce, or when you're in a sort of a tug of war and just trying to figure out like, where can we meet in the middle? I don't think that, like, for me, a meeting in the middle, taking a child off TikTok is not like, oh my God, he won.
Yeah.
I'm not going to let this person get this win over me. Like,
Right.
people have to stop thinking like that. Is it really?
But I think she is
unreasonable?
vindictive. I think she's
So
really vindictive.
there's a lot in that. I mean, again, seeing your children with someone when you want your wife back, and this person, there's photos of him with her kids in his lap.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot. You're doing a lot, and you're not. I was thinking this. I believe that at some particular point, and let's just say, depending on who's good or bad in terms of Pete or Kim, it is possible that they decided to end this relationship, kind of going back to your theory, where it may have been something that it was just so Kanye's mental health may have been so fragile that he was willing to do something that was sort of next level, that could not be, either he couldn't come back from, or that was going to be very detrimental and dangerous for the family,
for the brand,
or for the brand, exactly, or for reputations and whatnot. And it was just easier for her to, if she decides to date somebody, probably do it quietly. Maybe they're not really broken up at all.
I think there's real cred to that theory. I think there are some hints that in Kanye and Kim's relationship, there may have been agreements, Will and Jada type agreements.
Yeah.
I think that we're not dealing with like a conventional level of fame, obviously, and I don't think we're dealing with a conventional relationship either.
No, I don't think so.
I do think the rabbit hole goes a lot deeper in terms of how much resentment and just how much anger and vitriol might be between Kim and Kanye. But I also don't rule out those two getting back together either. Like I could totally see it.
There's been whispers because Kim was she had the kids, she had on the Kanye glasses, and then the kids had them on as well. So there were rumors.
Weird. That's weird stuff to do.
Right,
that's
exactly. Like fresh off a breakup, with your 9-month relationship, that was so loving and tatted and branded.
Right.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's just no telling with these people. I don't know what to believe. I just never go with whatever's just directly in front of me.
Yeah. I mean, well, we know that Kanye and Kim got together when they were both with other people, right?
That is correct.
They were secretly texting each other. So they like an amount of drama to whatever it is they do. Like that's their thing. They want to have the thing that's taboo, right? And I think it's hard to maintain the thing that's taboo when you become a family and there are kids and then you're managing this billion-dollar brand, both of them. So I think that things probably got boring, and this is a way to like introduce excitement into the relationship again.
Let's both date people that could be our children. You date the one that looks like me. Yeah, that sounds exciting. That sounds real exciting. Thanks for checking out the Unhinged podcast with Coco Puff and Drew Brees. If you like what you see, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that bell.